Now, from WYDC TV, this is Big Fox News at 10.
Good evening, I'm Anna Manuel. A new nominee has been named to replace the Chemung County legislator who passed away last weekend. Big Fox's Josh Feldberg spoke to the County Board of Elections about the change to the ballot.
Changes have been made to the Chemung County election ballot following the passing of Brian Hyland. Hyland served as the legislator for the 6th District in Chemung County for over a decade and was the incumbent for the Republican Party once more. The County Republican Party has nominated Joseph Donovan to fill the vacancy left by Hyland. A meeting was held today by the County Legislature Personnel Committee to approve Donovan to fill Hyland's seat. A full legislature meeting was also held to authorize the nomination. According to the Board of Elections, new ballots will be sent to absentee voters, and a new set of ballots will be created for polling stations for early voters. The board says absentee ballots that have already been returned with Hyland's name will not be counted for the election. These ballots will not be opened, and it will be like the voter never voted at all. This only applies for absentee voters in Chemung County's 6th District. Early voting for the election begins this Saturday at local polling stations. Information on polling locations in Chemung County are available on the Board of Elections website. Josh Feldberg, Big Fox News, Elmira.
A doctor in the Southern Tier has returned home after tending to war injuries in the battle zone in Ukraine. Big Fox's Maggie Hall spoke with that doctor to find out what it was like providing aid in a country immersed in such violent conflict.
Guthrie Dr. John Frondell traveled to the war-torn country of Ukraine. Now back from his medical mission, Dr. Frondell shared with me what it was like treating patients.
Everything looked pretty normal, but then you'd see these things that would remind you that you're in a war zone. These are the things they put out to stop tanks. And
Dr. Frondell has experience treating war injuries. The team jumped into operations their first day in Ukraine.
And actually this is during my first operation that afternoon.
Dr. Frondell, with a group of physicians, all from New York, treated around 40 patients, civilian and military alike.
I've been fortunate in my career to do a lot of this type of surgery in terms of blast injuries and gunshot wounds and things like that. But these are almost always more severe. I mean, the types of injuries I see here that are more like it are ironically like fireworks injuries and things like that.
Before he left Ukraine, Dr. Frondell received a huge honor from one of his patients.
And he said, wait just a second. He opened his military backpack and he pulled out his camouflage jacket and he tore off his name badge and this says Ukrainian military force, and he gave them to me.
Dr. Frondell plans on going back to Ukraine in the spring on another medical mission. Maggie Hall, Big Fox News, Sayre.
An Elmira woman arrested for allegedly trying to kidnap a 1-year-old child. Gabriella Baxter was arrested by Elmira police for an incident that happened on West Water Street. Officers say Baxter tried to take the young child from the back seat of a woman's car. Baxter is facing kidnapping and child endangerment charges. New photos have been released of 2 gas station scammers. Owego police are still looking for these 2 people who allegedly scammed a Speedway station in Owego out of more than $3,000. Police say the pair may be driving a white Ford sedan. Anyone with information is urged to contact police. Fiery debates Tuesday night in several key states where races for Senate and governor are close and getting closer. But with millions having already voted in early voting, will these debates really make an impact? Molly Hedenberg has more from Washington.
In the Pennsylvania Senate race between Democratic Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman and Republican Dr. Mehmet Oz, much of the analysis after this sole debate was focused on Fetterman's ability to handle the fast-paced back and forth after he suffered a stroke right before the Democratic primary in May. Fetterman's camp said he had a, quote, great debate.
John spoke better tonight than he did in the primary.
The Oz team said Fetterman is too, quote, extreme for Pennsylvania.
We saw tonight a debate that was a complete disaster for John Fetterman.
2 weeks before the midterms, there were also debates last night in New York. This was the only debate for the governor's race there. And in Michigan, this was the second and final debate in that race for governor. Nationwide, more than 11 million people have already voted in the midterms. And in states with late October debates, that can be a problem.
A lot of people have already cast their ballot. That's why it was political malpractice to only have one debate at the end of October.
This one gentleman said to me, "This is why I'm glad I don't early vote, because you don't really realize all the things that can come out before Election Day."
The Pennsylvania Senate race is so tight that former President Obama and President Biden will be campaigning for Lieutenant Governor Fetterman in the days just before the election. In Washington, Molly Henneberg, Fox News.
On Your Feet, the story of Gloria and Emilio Estefan is coming to the Clemens Center in Elmira. The dance-filled musical will take the stage November 1st and 2nd. The cast has been rehearsing at the center for the past month. Director Luis Saldago spoke to us about how this show sings of the lives of these Grammy Award stars and representation as well.
And so I think that they knew that telling the story, their story, and a Latina story through the lens of them having production control when we did it on Broadway was a way to be authentic, and it was a way to give a step forward both in the legacy they leave, but also in the legacy we receive. So that more and more Latina stories can come forward with the Latino perspective from creation, from producing, and this is really an example of that.
You can buy your tickets online for On Your Feet at clemenscenter.org. With respiratory illnesses on the rise, hospitals are beginning to feel the pressure, and doctors warn with flu season getting underway, the situation could get worse. William Lajeunesse has more.
A surge in respiratory illnesses combined with COVID-19 and the flu has doctors warning of a possible triple-demic. A virus known as RSV poses the biggest threat right now, mainly in younger children. It causes symptoms similar to the flu, such as fever, sore throat, and fatigue. Experts blame the spike in part on relaxing COVID precautions and a rise in indoor gatherings.
We know that if you have two viruses at the same time, you are sicker than if you just have one. And we are seeing kids with 3 and even 4 viruses all at the same time. And I've never seen that in 40 years.
Pressure now builds on hospitals. According to the CDC, about 75% of pediatric beds in the U.S. are filled.
It hits our youngest population, like newborns and young toddlers, pretty hard. And oftentimes those kids end up having difficulty breathing and need to be hospitalized for treatment of that.
The agency says flu activity is also on the rise, with Georgia, New York, and South Carolina seeing the greatest spike in cases. The number of COVID-19 infections remains low, but in previous years, cases increased around Thanksgiving. That has doctors recommending COVID boosters and flu shots by Halloween to prevent severe complications.
The only booster that matters now is this new booster that's kind of specified for the Omicron.
The Biden administration says a vaccine for RSV could be available by next fall. In Los Angeles, William Lajeunesse, Fox News.
Still ahead, we have a look at a claw-like spacecraft looking to tidy up the final frontier from space litter. That plus a look at your forecast. Stay with us.
Here's your local stock market update from Big Fox. Now, your Twin Tiers forecast from Big Fox.
Some showery weather was pushing across portions of New York. It did remain on the lighter side, but it continued to bring those gray clouds. Now, we'll note that there is a switch in the weather pattern taking over. As you can see with those winds, we're starting to turn out of the south back to the northwest. There could be a time of a few stronger wind gusts, especially as we head into portions of our Thursday forecast, but overall, not going to be blustery, more just going to influence some of those cooler temperatures. But due to the cloud cover holding on overnight, it is going to keep temperatures still on the more mild side. A few isolated isolated 30s popping up for overnight lows, but generally looking just around those lower 40s, which does keep us above that average of about 35 degrees for this time of the year. But what we'll trend to see as we continue into the rest of the work week is passing cloud cover will be around. Some decreases will be around through our Thursday and then increases again on Friday. But still, overall, what we'll see is that we're going to be talking seasonable temperatures in store for these last few days of October. The weekend, however, could include some temperatures climbing into the 60s, so that will bring us a few degrees above average for this time of the year, but nothing looking as warm as we were dealing with when we had earlier this week of those 70s and upper 60s. Going to be definitely hugging closer to what's seasonal for this time of the year. We'll also have to keep an eye on that extended forecast of that Halloween forecast, including potentially some rainy conditions, so meaning that we may need to pair up some of those Halloween costumes with umbrellas. But do note that it's not going to be a big swing in the temperature change at all. We look to continue to see some warmth as we head through the first few days of November. As we trend into that Thursday forecast, though, note that we continue to have that northwesterly wind dominant throughout the afternoon, and there could be a few isolated wind gusts up to 20 miles per hour. So with the northwesterly wind and it's being strong at times, note there will be a little chill to the air, so grabbing that fall jacket out the door will be wanted, as we'll see high temperatures just around seasonal, anywhere from about 51 in Wayland, Westfield around 52, to Elmira around 56 degrees, with that average for this time of the year just around 57 degrees. As we head into Friday morning, as we saw mild conditions in store for our Thursday, it's going to be much cooler for our Friday. We have these lows now hugging that freezing mark. So another frosty potential for a morning start out the door, and wanting to pull more and more of those layers out, especially for those kiddos that are going to be heading out to the bus stop in these early morning hours that are including less of that daylight before we will talk about the time frame falling back as we see daylight saving end in just a few weeks. Now trending into that Friday afternoon forecast, though, some slight warming, a degree or two warmer than what we were experiencing on Friday. Again, not a surge in these temperatures is what we're expecting, but still at least going to be hugging average, as our Halloween planner into the evening hours does look to be just around those upper 50s. So not overall too cool, but it is going to be cloudy, and it could include a few of those shower chances. So we'll keep an eye on that Monday forecast, but as we flip over to November on Tuesday, we could continue some showers, but overall temperatures continue to stay slightly above average.
Mortgage demand plummets, Clorox issues a recall, and a Halloween treat for travelers. Grady Trimble has those stories and more in today's Business Briefs.
Higher mortgage rates are cutting into home buying and refinancing. The Mortgage Bankers Association's average for a 30-year fixed mortgage rose to 7.16%. That's the highest level since 2001. Mortgage applications declined last week to the lowest level since 1997. The mortgage bankers are predicting a recession in the U.S. early next year and see mortgage rates slipping to 5.4% by the end of 2023. Clorox is recalling its scented multi-surface and all-purpose cleaners. Bottles of Pine Sol could contain bacteria that can cause serious illness in people with compromised immune systems. The recall doesn't include its iconic original pine-scented Pine Sol. $49. That's the monster sale Southwest is offering for one-way flights. But you have to book by Thursday on the airline's website. The offer is valid for tickets from November 29th all the way up until March 8th. And finally, musician and designer Ye West has lost his status as a billionaire, according to Forbes. It comes as more companies cut ties with the artist over his anti-Semitic comments. On Tuesday, Gap announced it's removing its Yeezy items from its stores immediately, and it's shutting down its Yeezy Gap website. Foot Locker instructed employees to pull all Yeezy products from its shelves, but Spotify says it has no plans to yank Ye's music.
Space, the final frontier. It's also, according to scientists, the final dumping ground for tons of technological debris. Marianne Rafferty takes a look at a device promising to make space cleaner and more sustainable.
Earth isn't the only thing man is polluting. Scientists are now pointing to the overwhelming amount of broken satellites, rocket parts, and other debris littering the final frontier. But British-based company ClearSpace says its claw-like craft can help remove the junk.
If you think about a car, if it breaks down or runs out of fuel, we do something about it. We fix it, we refuel it. We use it again. In space, we don't do that. We treat satellites as a single-use item.
ClearSpace's device features a retractable claw designed to grab debris and guide it to a lower orbit. where it will safely burn and disintegrate in the atmosphere. NASA says it's monitoring more than 27,000 pieces of space debris orbiting close to the Earth. Because the objects move at such a fast speed, the agency warns of catastrophic results if the debris were to strike a rocket also moving at rapid rates.
We really need to think about how we make sure our space activities are sustainable.
ClearSpace is preparing for its first mission in the next 3 to 4 years, where it will clear a piece of floating debris belonging to the European Space Agency. But besides getting rid of space junk, the company's craft will also be able to help restore failing satellites.
We see that lots of satellites are still functioning but run out of fuel. And without fuel, they can't keep operating.
The market for cleaning space debris and preventing collisions is expected to quickly take off. Analysts estimate the industry to be worth more than $14 billion by 2030.
Still ahead, a new report highlights how fossil fuel addiction is contributing to catastrophic health issues. That story and more coming up. In the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, a new study suggests that more needs to be done to help people understand the cone of uncertainty when it comes to a hurricane. The study shows that people have difficulty understanding the cone of uncertainty graphics, which show the size of the storm and the areas most at risk for damage. Joni Lewis has more.
A hurricane is not a point or a line on the map. It extends way to the west and way to the east.
And that's the intended message of the National Hurricane Center track forecast cone. It's something our team of meteorologists stressed when discussing how to prepare ahead of Hurricane Ian.
You got to remember, you got to put the weather here and the weather here. Not the line is not going to be where the worst weather is going to be.
Like this first advisory for what would become Hurricane Ian. It shows a large cone of uncertainty.
Really, in this case, I would say anywhere from the eastern Gulf, the Panhandle, to the peninsula had to pay attention to this storm.
But research shows when people see the cone, they think something completely different.
And quite often that weather extends outside the cone.
A team of researchers is studying how that misconception influences people's decision-making. The study, published in August, surveyed nearly 3,000 people across the state on how they interpret the cone graphic. They showed examples of one previously used by the Hurricane Center. 40% of people responded incorrectly, that they thought it showed where damage will occur.
That's the confusing part. It's the only job of the cone is to say, over time, based on statistics, this is where we think the center is going to be. The weather extends out way beyond the center.
The cone does not represent where impacts such as wind, storm surge, rain, and flooding will be. Forecasters agree and highlighted long-standing concerns over the cone and the need to develop more effective communication.
I think we need to simplify it. We need a better way to portray storm impact, storms damage, and how people should prepare for an impending hurricane.
The climate crisis continues to threaten millions of lives. Ted Lindner has a look at a new report highlighting fossil fuel addiction and how it's contributing to catastrophic health issues.
Scientists from around the world say global dependence on fossil fuels is making people sicker and weaker. According to a new report published in the medical journal The Lancet, air pollution from the burning of fossil fuels kills roughly 1.2 million people every year, with nearly 12,000 deaths in the U.S. alone.
Until we know how to remove emissions from the atmosphere and do something with them, even this past perilous year may well prove to be better than almost any year ahead of us.
Global carbon dioxide emissions last year rose to their highest level in history, with the International Energy Agency expecting them to keep rising through 2022, causing global temperatures to remain hotter for longer and fueling more extreme weather emergencies. On Tuesday, the Lancet report warned how climate change has increased heat-related deaths by nearly 70% in vulnerable communities of color.
And that's because there are systems of income, class, race that are always in play.
The report also states extreme weather disasters are resulting in roughly 100 million more people going hungry. Academic experts say ongoing Western drought is proof the U.S. is not immune to a climate-driven hunger crisis.
The extreme heat and drought out west has really put upward pressure on prices for things like vegetables and fruit. For example, California is one of the largest producers of processing tomatoes that go into a lot of our pantry items. Things like pasta sauce and other prepared foods are going to be going up in price because of the price increases due to those weather events.
Stay with us. We'll have more after the break. We want to leave you with a smile. Royal Caribbean is selling tickets for what it calls the largest passenger ship to sail the 7 seas. The Icon of the Seas will set sail in January of 2024, and the cruise line is now accepting reservations. Royal Caribbean says the ship has the largest water park at sea, with 6 water slides, including one that has a 46-foot drop. Tickets start at $1,500 and go up to roughly $2,000. If you book a later trip, tickets will set you back about $1,000. I'm Scott Beadle. Thank you so much for watching.